1950, Bauru, Brazil. Deco and his friends shine shoes before stealing socks from the washing machine to make a ball.
Welcome, señores y señores!
They run through the streets playing football and have fun as they get muddy and dirty. Deco's mother, Celeste, looks at her dirty sons with disdain. She makes them clean up before going back to shining shoes. It's the 1950 World Cup final with Brazil facing Uruguay. Deco's father, Dondino, joins other men as they gather around the radio and listen to the match commentators. Deco and his friends climb onto the roof and secretly listen too. Brazil loses and everyone takes it badly. Dondino cries, so Deco runs up to him and promises to win the World Cup for Brazil.
I'll win a World Cup for Brazil, but I promise.
His father tells him to listen to his mother, focus on school, and avoid football. Deco helps his mother clean a rich family's house. She talks about how Dondino used to play football, but fortunately stopped. Deco doesn't listen as he looks at the food in the kitchen. Celeste leaves briefly, and he rushes to stuff his face with food. Jose, the son of the rich family, comes in with his friends, and they talk about football and which famous players they dream of being. Deco gets excited and joins in. But he pronounces a goalkeeper's name wrong, saying Pele instead. Jose and his friends laugh and call him Pele. He gets angry, but Celeste comes back in, stops him from fighting, and apologizes to Jose for her son. Deco encourages his friends to join him in a local football tournament. They have fun winning and are headed to the semi-finals when Jose and his team mock them in front of everyone. They loudly call them the shoeless ones, and people laugh at them. Deco comes up with a plan to steal peanuts from nearby workers.
We need football boots.
Boots?
And sell them so they can buy football boots. Jose and his friends show up and insist on calling Deco Pele. He gets angry and slaps Jose, which results in both teams fighting. Back home, he lies to Celeste, saying the teacher hit him. Dondino steps in and says he'll deal with it. He takes Deco on a walk and says he remembers when he fought at Deco's age. Fighting comes from insecurity, and he can't become a professional player if he's ashamed of who he is. It's the day of the finals, and the boys are wearing homemade vests and second-hand football boots. Tiago takes off his glasses so the other team won't make fun of them. The announcer is on Jose's side and calls their team the shoeless ones and pretends Deco's name is Pele.
Led by Captain Pele!
Waldemar, the owner of Santos Football Club, is there looking for new recruits. The boys agree to copy the other team if they're in doubt. They're losing to the rich jerks, and Deco wants to fight Jose, but stops when he sees his father. He takes off his football boots, despite people laughing at him. Seeing his father puts him at peace, and he imagines himself playing football in the streets with his friends. His teammates join him by taking off their shoes, and Tiago puts on his glasses. They play as themselves and score 5 goals in 10 minutes, but still lose to the other team. Despite losing, the crowd chants the name Pele, and Waldemar gives Dondino his business card. The men from whom they stole peanuts chase the boys. Tiago falls, and Deco runs back to help him. They hide in a mud tunnel. He tells Deco that he can use football to get out of the village. The heavy rain causes the tunnel to collapse. The boys try to escape, but Tiago is stuck. The men who were chasing them dig him out, but it's too late. They carry his dead body back to the village. Deco tells Celeste about what happened and blames himself because if he hadn't wanted football boots, Tiago wouldn't be dead. She comforts him and he promises to study and do well in school. That night, Dondino gives Celeste Waldemar's card. She puts it in her drawer and insists Deco works with him as a caretaker at the clinic. He's angry and hates the work. One day, during a work break, Dondino tells Deco that when he was a kid, he practiced football by using mangoes. He takes a mango from the tree and he starts doing tricks with it, but his son doesn't join him. Deco keeps working at the clinic and no longer plays football with his friends. Eventually, he joins his father, who teaches him how to control a mango like a football while still being gentle. Pele is 15 and is incredible as a player. Celeste sees this and calls Waldemar, who invites him to join the Santos Football Club. His parents are worried about him, but encourage the choice. Deco says goodbye and leaves for the football club. 1956, Santos Football Club, Brazil. The club's coach wants Deco to stop using tricks and keep the ball on the ground.
Business I'm talking about. Ball on the ground.
Waldemar sees Deco practice after hours by trying to score goals without using Jenga. He struggles during the youth team's match and decides to leave. Waldemar follows him to the train station. Deco says he wants to go back to school because he doesn't play football like the others. Waldemar says there's nothing wrong with it and speaks about the history of his primitive tricks. The slaves brought to Brazil in the 16th century escaped and learned capoeira to defend themselves. When slavery was abolished, the only way to use capoeira was through football. This developed the style known as Jenga, but these days, Brazilians try to remove from who they are. Deco decides to stay. The team is losing during the next match, and he uses the skills his father taught him over the years. He scores a goal, and the coach tells him to continue using Jenga.
Do it again.
The Santos members are happy with him, and everyone back home keeps track of his career by listening to matches on the radio. Deco visits home and brings his family gifts. They celebrate when they hear he's selected to be on the Brazilian team for the World Cup. Deco sits with one of his childhood friends and says playing football in the club isn't the same as when they were kids. He finds out one of his friends got arrested trying to rob a store. His friend promises Deco they're all rooting for him. Dondino recalls being a professional footballer when he was younger, but doubted himself and stopped believing in Jenga. He says it's a critical time for the country and gives Deco the vest from his childhood tournament with the name Pele embroidered on the back.
I wanted to play with Jenga, so beautiful.
He wants his son to withstand the criticism of others and to follow his heart. In 1957, Rio, Brazil, famous footballers greet Deco and sees that Jose is also on the national team. The head coach, Feiola, has a private meeting with Deco and instructs him not to use Jenga. Jose is part Italian and speaks to reporters about changing the world's view of Brazil by introducing elegant Italian football techniques. Deco is encouraged by a teammate to avoid using Jenga, and he begins to protest by repeating the advice his father gave, but gives up and agrees. He isn't confident in his abilities using simple football techniques, so tries Jenga tricks. He doubts himself and ends up injuring his knee. He calls his parents and apologizes for letting them down. They tell him he made the right choice to leave and play football, and they'll love him no matter what. The team doctor examines his knee and says he may be able to play in the next season. He puts on a rehabilitation program. Reports come in that Brazil is doomed to repeat its mistakes and will lose like they did in 1950. The World Cup, Sweden, 1958. Team Sweden is the home nation and is expected to win. Deco must watch his team play while he recovers. He feels isolated and is eventually allowed to play, but his knee is still weak. Jose is injured and can no longer play. Feiola is harsh with Deco, and the doctor warns him not to use Jenga as it will be dangerous for his weak leg. The crowd teases him while the people in his village watch the match on television. Dondino hopes Deco won't listen to the crowd and will trust himself instead. In the semi-final against France, Team Brazil is struggling. Deco is disoriented. During halftime, he goes over to Jose and asks him to play if his injury has healed. Jose says it's not his leg, but his head that's holding him back. His entire life he wanted to be European, but being there made him see he's truly Brazilian. He recalls how Jenga was a part of them as kids. It was beautiful and is what the team needs now. The second half begins and Jose supports Deco from the sidelines. He believes in himself and in Jenga and goes on to score 3 goals, which sends them to the finals. Dondino rushes home to tell Celeste that Deco scored 3 goals and is all right. She refuses to listen or to watch any football and is relieved to hear her son is doing well. Feiola has them train as Sweden does so they can shift formation accordingly. Both the coach and players have difficulty adapting to the Swedish style. Brazil and Sweden are interviewed 2 days before the big match. The Swedish coach is cruel and calls the Brazilian players abnormal. He says it's not racial discrimination, but a fact, and goes on to list injuries the Brazilian players have from their lifestyle of hard labor. He also includes deformities they were born with, causing Feiola to storm out in anger.
What do you expect? They're abnormal.
Deco calls his father because he's worried. Dondino says it's time for Pele to play. The day before the finals, the players are disheartened. Deco tries to improve their spirits and, with Jose's help, gets them to brighten up. They play a game of getting the ball to the lighthouse without the ball bouncing on the ground. They have fun working together. At training, Feiola tells them that they will lose the finals if they play as they have been. It will be his fault as he's been trying to get them to play like Sweden, but what he saw at the hotel is their way of winning. They don't play like the European teams, and each player has different styles. They're told this is wrong, but it's not as they have Ginga and joy and expression. He doesn't know if they'll win, but he's sure they'll show the world a beautiful game.
I want them to see Brazil just as we are.
It's the World Cup final, and commentators refer to Deco as Pele. Back home, everyone is watching, and his mother even listens on the radio. Deco embraces Ginga and his teammates follow. They are keenly aware of each other and work in perfect harmony. Others are confused as to why the Brazilians are smiling while they play. Brazil is ready to play as themselves. Brazil embraces Ginga and scores another goal. Brazil embraces their individual styles and work together in perfect harmony. They're keenly aware of each other and are connected as they play. Commentators confused as to why Brazil is smiling while they play.
It appears they're smiling. I've never seen anything.
Father pleased to watch game with his friends and Pele's old friends. Everyone is already happy and proud of Brazil even though they didn't win. They score 3 goals, and Celeste gathers the courage to join her husband in watching the match. Deco scores the 4th goal, and they win the 1958 World Cup. The team surrounds Pele and lifts him up as they cry. The rest of the world celebrates with them. In 1961, Brazil's president declared Pele an official national treasure. At 17, Pele is the youngest player ever to score in and win the World Cup. Pele and Team Brazil went on to win the 1962 and 1970 World Cups. Pele is the only player in history to win 3 World Cups and holds the record for most career goals with 1,283. One record Pele never beat was heading 5 goals in one game, a record held by his father. Pele was named Athlete of the Century by the International Olympics Committee. Since the 1958 World Cup, Brazil's Ginga style has become the most celebrated playing style worldwide.